It is December 20th, 2024. We are at the Homeless Memorial Vigil on Freedom Plaza. Could you tell me your name?
Marcia Bernbaum, known as Marcy.
And as I understand it, you're a long-time former member of People for Fairness Coalition.
Yes, between 2014 and 2020, very, very active with PFFC.
How did you get involved in PFFC?
Well, I was conceived, born and raised in Latin America, and my husband and I worked with our USAID, our United States Agency for International Development, helping the poorest of the poor in other countries. And I decided when I retired that I wanted to collaborate with the underserved population. And in 2014, I learned of PFFC, and I wanted to get to know people one-on-one rather than designing and implementing million-dollar projects. And I was asked if I could become a member, not experiencing homelessness. And I wanted to be alongside. I wanted to get to know wonderful people like Robert Warren and Kadir Alamin and others who were friends. And so, yeah, I started going to the meetings and progressively got more involved.
And as you got involved, what were the things that you were working on?
Well, not long after I arrived, I was there to listen and learn because I'm basically an applied cultural anthropologist and I wanted to get to know people and understand. And a member of PFFC came with a complaint that there were no public restrooms. And so I did some research, and the next thing I knew, I was put in charge of coming up with a strategy. And we established the Downtown DC Public Restroom Initiative with several colleagues from PFFC and advocated and finally got a bill introduced. So that was one thing. But I got involved. I helped them put together their website. I coordinated a lot of the activities for the events like now. I was there to help people with the finances. And and it was just a real privilege and an honor. And to this day, I still have many very dear friends who have experienced homelessness or are currently in housing, which is why I came tonight. I haven't seen them for a few years.
That's terrific. You, I think, kind of gave the very short version of the public restroom. I guess I might call it a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us what was the strategy that you all put together, and how did you manage to be successful with this?
Well, that's successful in some ways. So our strategy was to raise consciousness of the need for clean, safe public restrooms because DC, our nation's capital, has hardly any. And so we did a lot of advocacy. I have an applied research background, so we based it on research on availability of restrooms, developed a professional presentation. We got help from a variety of people as volunteers. And in 2016, we met with Brianne Nadeau, who at that point was in charge of the Human Services Committee. And before we knew it, she said, "I'm very impressed with what you're doing. I'm coming up with a bill." So that threw us into heavy-duty work. We never imagined we'd get to that far. And then we ended up the bill was passed, and then the fun began, the DC bureaucracy and the challenges. And that was hard. But there are restrooms now, and thanks to Brianne Nadeau, but it was a struggle, yeah.
And what are the limitations with the implementation that we see today?
Well, implementations, if I can be very frank, is that where public restrooms initiatives are successful is where the leadership jumps in. Had our mayor instantly said we need public restrooms, we would have had them 5 years ago. So this has not been a priority. The pandemic definitely affected the ability and the bureaucracy. DGS and others taking a long time pulling things together. A lot of resistance, which we found very unusual. But Brianne Nadeau, in 2023, when we saw the Department of General Service, which was supposed to implement part of the initiative, was just not planning to do anything, she was the head of the chairman of the Public Works Committee, and she now 2 years running has gotten funding to pilot uh, 6 public restrooms in different areas.
I see.
And they're wonderful. Down the street from here, DuPont Circle, Columbia Heights, they're called Thrones. And so we are no longer directly involved, but we updated our website, and our website, dcpublicrestrooms.org, shares with other people who want to advocate lessons learned from what worked and what didn't work,
That's great.
and our research.
And of the things that worked, what were the kind of top takeaways? What?
Well, what worked was getting a good bit of attention from the media. Our applied research studies helped bolster our argument. We did over 70 presentations to numerous organizations, at least that many testimonies, at different hearings. But what didn't work was the commitment to put the funding in and to make it happen. And again, lesson learned, in cities where the leader is interested, it's done.
I see.
But it's happening.
Yes.
It's happening.
That's
So we'll
good.
see.
From and I know I think you've taken a step back from what I've heard, but from your experience, what would you say are the next kind of struggles that you think people are ready to move on, or we should start working towards addressing?
In terms of
Homelessness in particular.
well, homelessness, absolutely, and I think it goes without saying that I suspect that I haven't spoke to people in the community, but I think our incoming president is quite determined to decide that homelessness is not an issue. And I think that's going to be a major, major issue. And yes, the realization that educating people that people experiencing homelessness, not homeless, but people experiencing, come from many backgrounds. It's not just people who are alcoholics and drug addicts. People in D.C., as the rents get higher, people end up on the streets. And I must say, I admire some of the people I've gotten to know, like Robert Warren, Andrew Anderson, Kadir Elamin, who have been through incredible struggles in their lives, ones that perhaps you and I can't speak for, wouldn't, and they have persevered and continue to devote themselves, and that is really very impressive.
That's terrific. Are there any other things you'd like to leave us with today?
Just that it's a pleasure to be back here after 4 years and see some of the people and others I keep up with, and yes, let us look forward to 4 years that are going to be less rocky than I suspect they will be.
Thank you so much for your time.
Sure.